Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look at a game that is very special to me, and that is Tactics 2. This is a game designed by Charles S. Roberts and was published by the Avalon Hill Game Company. First came out in 1958. I received my copy in the late 70s, and that was my first war game. That's what started me on my journey of playing war games, which has gone on and off over the years, as I think everybody has experienced that as you get, different things in life get in your way. But this is what started it all. I had mentioned this on Ardwolf's show. He had done a content creator roundtable with Stuka Joe, Alexander from the Player's Aid, and myself. And I had mentioned how this was my first war game, and it will always have a very special place in my heart, but I've since lost the game, and I've always wanted to get another copy. Well, lo and behold, after the show, Brian Patterson reaches out to me on Facebook. He's a member of the Mo's Game Table channel on YouTube and just said, hey, give me your address. I'm going to send you a copy of it. I've got a really fantastic copy and I want to send it to you. And he did, and I can't thank him enough. This is just, when I opened that box, it was just awesome to see this game again. I had not seen it since I was a kid and held it in my hands, and it was a really nice flashback moment for me, especially when I opened it up and took a look inside, which we're going to do here in a moment. I'm not going to read the text on the front, but I will show you the text on the back. And we're not going to go over the whole thing like I normally do. Like I said, this is a very special look at things here. You'll see the map, which has the squares on it. It is a different type of map than we're used to today with the hexes and all the super graphics and everything. But man, this is just still a fantastic game if you want to have a nice throwback and look to where it all started with Charles S. Roberts, the father of modern wargaming, which is why the Charlies are named after him. So let's take a look inside the box and see what's inside. And inside we get a pair of D6, which was an addition that Brian had added in a red and a blue die because this is red versus blue. We have the Avalon Hill Victory Games registration card. Fill out some information, send in your address, and get registered for their mailing list. Include $2, you can get a large full color catalog, and you can also sign up a friend and get them on the mailing list as well. Then we have the Avalon Hill Universal Games and Parts list, which was effective November 1st, 1995. Gives you all the game numbers in the catalog. So if you need to look up the game number, you can, and then you can order your parts or games directly from here. New board games at the back, we have London's Burning, Kampfgut Piper, Surf TV, and Air Baron. And then Avalon Con, July 31st, August 4th, 1996 in Baltimore, Maryland. And then there was the 800 number. Then we have the rule book for Tactics 2. The red and blue counters for the game. We have trying to be careful here with this, the weather chart. And on the back of the weather chart has the time record card. And then we have the CRT, which I remember when I first looked at this as a kid, I was like, man, this is like doing multiplication tables. That was the first thing I thought of. It tells you all the different factors, and then, of course, how to resolve your combat, your defender's factor, and explains how to get your basic odds, things like that. But it really does break it down in really good depth for you, which now we take for granted. You just do the math in your head, but back then, that's how it was laid out. Then we have the mounted map board, which I'm going to very carefully take out of here because this is an older box and I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure it stays in great shape. And let's set up the map and then we'll take a closer look at the game. And here's a look at the mounted map that comes with the game. You look at this, it's obviously a very far cry from the games that we have now in 2021 versus 1958. But every journey starts with the first step. And this was the basic style maps that were used in games like Gettysburg and Tactics 2 that Charles S. Roberts designed for Avalon Hill back in the day. Today, we've become so spoiled with these absolutely gorgeous maps, hexes, all the information, the charts and tables on a lot of maps. Sometimes they don't have them on the maps and they're on just player aids, but this is the first style design. And squares were the thing back then. Everything that we're used to today, that we take for granted today, is here on this map. All the different types of terrain. You've got mountains here, which can only be traversed by mountain units. You've got bridges, these little black rectangles that are crossing boundaries here as you've got the rivers going through the roads. Those are your bridges. You've got bivouac areas, which are the dotted lines here. Cities, different cities throughout the map. And then you've also, speaking of cities, the ones with the lines off them, those are ports. Then you have sea areas, obviously, and forests. We've got forested areas. And all of these things were new to people at the time. Now we take it for granted, but this is a pretty cool thing to look back historically, as well as for me, nostalgia-wise. I spent a lot of time playing this game when I was like 12, 13 years old, when I first got this game, playing it solitaire and then also playing it with friends. A lot of time spent in the basement eating pizza and drinking soda, enjoying this game. And yes, back in those days, we did keep the pizza and the soda by the game, and we did handle our counters with greasy fingers, although we'd wipe them off, but not like today where we're a lot more cautious and careful with our pieces, but it still brings brings back a flood of great memories, and it's just a joy to see this map on the table again, and I'm really looking forward to playing through this game and reliving some of the glory days of my youth and the good old times when I first got into wargaming. Now we'll take a look at the counter sheet that comes with the game, and you can see that over 6 decades later, we're still using the same format. Why? Because it works. On the left-hand side is the combat factor, on the right-hand side is the movement factor. A lot of games today will have prettier counters, but most of them still use NATO symbology. And that is because it is very functional and it's easy to use, and everybody is very familiar with it. You've got different types of units. You've got armies, armor, airborne, infantry, mountain units, amphibious units. So you can see there's a wide array of different units, even in this first game that was brought out by Charles S. Roberts. Now we'll take a look at the weather chart. This is where you just do a simple die roll of 1d6 and you cross-index it with the season. For example, you roll a 3, spring and summer, it's going to be perfect weather. In the fall, you got high winds, so that means no paradrops, no amphibious assaults. In the winter, it gives you sub-zero temps. No amphibious assaults, no sea transfers, and you will ignore river effects on movement and combat. And on the back, we have the time record card. This is where you'll keep track of your replacements. Something we have a much easier way of doing today, either through different player aids or replacement tracks on the game board. But this is how it was done with Tactics 2. And we'll take a look at the combat results table. At the top is what we're used to seeing today. Your standard odds and breakdown with the result from the die roll. Below that, today we'll have some explanation of what the different things mean in the boxes, but we don't have the breakdown of the factoring like it does here. That's because now we're used to the math. Back then it was a new concept, so it was really explained in great detail. All the way down 60 to 40 are the odds, and even in the insert here, it'll tell you how to round off your fractions. But back then, I remember when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a lot of math. This looks like times tables. That's what it reminded me of right away. And then I just realized very quickly, it's pretty simple. Now we just take it for granted because we've done it so many times that we can easily figure out our odds. But this is where it all started. Now we'll take a look at the rules. This is a 16-page rule book. And I want to just look at the differences and similarities from the rule book back then to rules of today, because this is what laid the framework for the games we play today. We have the introduction. There are 3 levels of play in the game: the basic, advanced, and the optional rules. And then the concepts as explained back then in the 50s. It says here the map board is your chessboard. Unit counters are your chessmen. This was a newer style of game in the commercial game marketplace, so Charles Roberts was trying to convey the concepts of the game in ways that were relational to the game players of that time. Chess was a very popular game, still is, always will be, but back then people could easily relate to chess by saying, oh, this is a chessboard, these are my chessmen. Okay, I get the basic concept now. Now let me dig into it a little further. And how does a game play? How do you start playing a game? It explains to the unit counters the different values, how you can have combat. You need to be next to your unit to be able to have combat. Bridges, we've got illustrated examples of play. There's a lot of war game rule books today that don't use illustrated examples of play. They were doing it from the beginning, which is fantastic. Then we have the finish of the basic rules on page 6, and then we start off with the advanced rules on page 7. What are the advanced rules? Terrain. Adding terrain in is now considered an advanced rule back then. And what those terrain effects had on movement, combat, things like that. Rivers, mountains, bridges, cities. And there's your effects of terrain on combat and your terrain effects chart there on page 9. Then we have special units, mountain units, paratroop units, and amphibious units. Special movement, sea transfers, organization of forces. Then we get to the optional rules here on page 11. Weather is an optional rule. That's something new that you can add in. Replacements, isolation, nuclear weapons. And then we get to the example of play here on page 13, and it gives you more illustrated examples of how you do each of the different concepts. This is a really well-written rule book, especially for back then when all these concepts were new. They didn't try to just give you a text dump with a text rule book. There were illustrated examples that really did help you understand the concepts they were trying to teach. Then the last page, we have the military tactics and strategy, the principles of war, the staff and its relationship to command, terrain, strength, and initiative evaluation in Tactics 2. And then on the back, we have the problems of nuclear warfare. And that is a look at everything you get inside of Tactics 2. This is a game designed by Charles S. Roberts and published by Avalon Hill Game Company. This is not your standard preview I do. This is more of a trip down memory lane. And for me, this is a very special trip. And thank you so much, Brian Patterson, for your generosity. I really, really appreciate you sending this game to me. This means a lot to me because this is the game that started it all. And I really, this was the first war game I had. And looking at this now, I have a lot of memories that came back to me, thinking about playing with different friends and different games we had, different outcomes, and lots of laughs, a lot of trash talking, a lot of pizza, a lot of soda, just a lot of great times. And it was really awesome to be able to step back in time to what was a much simpler, more fun time than what we're dealing with today with a lot of the difficulties that we're having to face. But it was so cool to transport back to those days. And I'm going to do that again by playing this game on the table. This is not a collector's piece. This isn't going to sit unpunched. I'm really happy that he sent me an unpunched copy so I can show you this. But I'm punching this and I'm playing this because this is, to me, still a classic, always will be, and it's a very special game to me. So I'm definitely going to play it, and I'm going to introduce my wife to it. Maybe she can kind of see why I've become addicted to war games, and this is the one that started it all. Well, thanks for joining me on this special trip down memory lane, and I hope this was something that you guys can relate to as well. I know a lot of you had this game. Maybe it was your first war game as well, and this will kind of bring back some of those great memories, those fond memories of our youth when things were simpler, games were a lot of fun, and the central focal point of our time because we didn't have jobs and things like that as kids. We can consume ourselves thinking about all day about games and coming up with different strategies to pull on our friends to try to win games. But a lot of good times were had with this game. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.